Hello and welcome to Unnecessary Roughness, Barstool's college football podcast, brought to you by High Noon Hard Seltzer. High Noon has the tailgate pack, the cranberry, the pear. High Noon is the best drink for college football. It is the best drink for pretty much anywhere. Right now, if you're going home for the holidays, whether you're putting together a holiday Christmas party with your family or at work, make sure you grab a bunch of packs of High Noon because everybody that comes will be impressed and delicious and everything.
And it's NFL playoff season coming up.
Yes.
Last few weeks of the regular season, lots of tailgates happening. So we obviously talk about college football tailgating, which is coming to an end, unfortunately. Bowl season is. But, you can tailgate any sporting event you want, and you can take High Noon to any sporting event you want.
We call it tailgating, right?
Yes, we do.
It's really just partying, drinking, eating.
Sometimes on a tailgate.
Yeah, sometimes on a tailgate, but how many tailgates happen on a tailgate?
Not very many.
I'd say like 20%.
Probably. Maybe even a little bit
Lower?
less.
Lower, yeah.
I think it depends on where you are. In the South, there's probably way more.
I would say in the South I'd say in the South is less, because in the South we'll bring out the tents and we'll walk to the tailgate and we'll make the tailgate a whole big thing itself.
Okay.
Whereas in like Buffalo, they'll just do it right in the parking lot.
Well, Buffalo just does everything.
Buffalo, Philly, they do it in the parking lot. They actually do tailgate.
And Buffalo right now, they're very high on their team, as they should be. It's going to be snowing a bunch, and guess what? We'll probably see High Noons there.
High Noons. Check them
Noon.
out. High Noon, best flavors, best drinks, best everything. All right, so lot going on right now. It's Unnecessary Roughness. Casey Smith's here. Jack Mack's here. Katie Stats will join us in just a second. She has a work meeting that supersedes the importance of this show. Gaz, I'm going to talk to you very soon.
I'm about to say, it's not her saying it's
Right.
more important. It's Paul.
Very angry at Paul. Anyway, not the usual. We didn't do a cold open, and we didn't do the funny opening and the goofy stuff, because this is it's a sad day for college football. It's a bad day for college football. It's not, Mike Leach. Mike Leach, the coach of the Mississippi State Bulldogs for 3 years. Before that, the coach of the Washington State Cougars. Before that, the coach of the Texas Tech Red Raiders. An innovator. He died last night at the age of 61. Had a massive heart attack on Sunday and passed away Monday night. And it's this show's mostly going to be about Mike Leach and the impact he had and everything. Casey, a massive, massive loss for college football.
Massive loss for so many different reasons. Obviously, just first and foremost, a human being, surprising tragedy type of death, but also when you look at everything that Mike Leach has done for the sport, not just on the field, and I know we'll talk all about the air raid offense and talk about his innovative style of play, but just every single week, no matter where he was coaching, you knew that if you saw Mike Leach in front of a microphone, in front of a camera, it was going to be gold. It was going to be treasure. And so he wasn't just a guy that is known for what he did as a coach with the players on the field. He was a true character, and a genuine one at that. And you and I have both had the pleasure of meeting him and working with him. And he wasn't just like that for cameras. He was like that at all times.
So I've gotten a lot of DMs, and I've gotten a lot of people here saying, sorry about your coach, sorry about your coach, sorry about your coach. And I just do not view this from a Mississippi State lens. I really don't. Now, we can have the Mississippi State conversation at some point, but this, to me, is not just a Mississippi State loss. This is a terrible loss for college football. It's a terrible loss for sports.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in today's world of college football, particularly, all coaches are buttoned up and they're corporate and they're scared of their own shadow and they don't want to say anything that goes against the brand, and they everything they say is run through 3 publicists and 2 PR guys. And Mike Leach was the opposite of all of that. He was as real as it gets in a fake profession. He was a guy, and I've told this story. For Unnecessary Roughness, I interviewed him. We had him on this show back in April, and I went and interviewed him. And it is not like talking to a major college football coach. If we weren't sitting overlooking the practice field for Mississippi State, I wouldn't have thought I was sitting talking to an SEC football coach. It was just like Mike Leach was like if your plumber became a college football coach. Like, that's who he was. He was a regular guy with regular opinions that happened to be on the grand stage, and his regular opinions showed how kind of crazy the rest of the college sports world is. When he would say something that was common sense and clever, we kind of treated it like, oh my God, this guy's a unicorn, but he really was a unicorn.
No, it doesn't. This is like with most deaths.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel real yet.
Yeah.
It feels like it's not going. It will wake up tomorrow. Mike Leach will still be there. he'll have a crazy quote or tweet on signing day or whatever. But that won't happen, and it really stinks. And obviously it stinks, but I do think he left an impact that is up there with among the greats. I don't think we see the likes of Patrick Mahomes without Mike Leach. Obviously, I know he didn't coach Mahomes at Texas Tech, but the air raid offense and whatnot, opening everything up, the spread offense, that all came not just from him, but he was a big part of it, and he changed football forever. There's probably a high school coach before him, but you know what I'm saying.
Even if he never said a funny word at a press conference, if he never said a funny joke, if he never did something that went viral, if he never said fat little girlfriends, if he never did any of that, just the things that he did when not on camera changed the game of football. The NFL is not the wide open NFL pass happy league that it is right now without him. Patrick Mahomes, you're right. The exploits of Patrick Mahomes and guys like him. Does Caleb Williams win a Heisman if Mike Leach never happens? Because Lincoln Riley is a direct disciple of Mike Leach. And so many of the wide open coaches today are direct disciples. So many guys who have won big in this game, Bob Stoops, have been directly affected by Mike Leach. His influence is everywhere. His offense is everywhere. And again, he is not the guy that sat down and said, I am going to invent this offense.
Of course.
But he is a guy that was on the ground floor of that offense and spread it throughout college football. And I guess his head coaching career spanned some 20 years, and it was awesome.
And when you look at the air raid offense, obviously somebody, if it wasn't Mike Leach, somebody was going to come along and implement that. There's no doubt. And so anytime, it's like, well, he invented it. No, but he was one of the first names that you could look at and say, not only did he implement it into his system, he was also successful with it. There was a lot of times where you looked at teams that he had that on paper, you're like, this guy shouldn't be having success like he does, but he did because he was so good at it. But the biggest thing is when you were even just going through some of the accolades of his off the field stuff, the famous quotes that he had, when you said the fat little girlfriends thing, I immediately just genuinely smirked because those are the types of clips that we live for as fans.
I mean, it's in our intro. It's been in our intro for 260 plus episodes. We've had bonuses. It's been in it for 275 times. He's been a part of this podcast long before he was the coach at Mississippi State. He is college football, and
Jack, he also did comeback season. I was looking back yesterday to see exactly when we interviewed him, and he was one of my first interviews at Barstool because he called in when this podcast that eventually evolved into this wonderful thing we have now, but it did start as comeback season with myself, Johnny Manziel, and his agent Eric Burkhart, and Mike Leach came on, and the title of that podcast was A Little Bit of Everything with Mike Leach, and that's because you could not put him in any situation and only talk about one thing. So we talked about sports, we talked about the game, talked about his influence, on guys like Johnny, like Cliff Kingsbury, but then he starts talking about his own personal finances and talks about hot actresses and those are the things that you remember Mike Leach for. And it's not only going to change, our day-to-day as college football fans, but, he obviously impacted a lot of people's lives, both personally and professionally.
I'm not real familiar with what comeback season is or was, so don't mention that one again.
Only just because he was our guest on it.
Still not a thing. Anyway.
Well, it's not anymore. We have a much better podcast now.
I have some, I just want to share some personal, because he was Mississippi State's head coach.
Yes.
I guess just if you're watching this, Mike Leach passed away of a heart attack. He had a heart attack Sunday morning. I do have ties. Of course, I'm a Mississippi State guy. He was my coach. And I just want to share a little bit of what the last 48 hours looked like because a lot of people might have been shocked and everything. So from what I understand, when his wife woke up on Sunday morning, there was obviously a problem.
Yep.
There was an issue, and he was then airlifted to Jackson, which to take you guys inside what it's like to live in the state of Mississippi. If you get airlifted to Jackson, it's just never good. It's rarely good. You have feeder hospitals throughout the state. Tupelo's got a good hospital. Columbus has a decent hospital. Starkville has an okay hospital. But if you go to one of those hospitals and they move you to Jackson, something has gone pretty wrong. So that was the first sign that everything was a problem. My friend Brian Haydad, who runs the Thunder and Lightning podcast down there, that covers Mississippi State sports.
Funny guy.
Really funny guy.
On his podcast.
Yeah, if I weren't here, if I didn't get the break I did, I would probably be in Mississippi doing a podcast with him. But he had a Christmas party at his house Saturday night. Mike Leach came to the Christmas party.
Wow.
Now, keep in mind what I'm telling you. This is a media guy who does a podcast about Mississippi State sports, and the head coach of the school came to his Christmas party that he's throwing for him and his media friends. I mean, that right there tells you. I'm not trying to throw shade at any other coach because, coaching's hard. I don't think Nick Saban's going to a lot of Alabama beat writers' Christmas parties. I just don't. That's just an unusual thing to do. And Leach was there, and he was taking pictures, and he was happy. And the next morning, it was obviously a problem, and it became evident quickly that it was life threatening. And
a lot of mention of he had pneumonia over the past. Was that connected, or
it is believed it wasn't connected?
Okay.
But I can't speculate medically.
Yeah.
There were rumors towards the end of the season that and I'm just speaking truthfully and hopefully not out of turn. There were rumors out there that Mike Leach is having health issues, but it was all lung related and everything. And this, I'm not a doctor. This could be a completely separate issue. It could be linked. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he died of heart failure. So Mike Leach, we found that out Sunday and into Monday, and it was dire and everything. And come Monday night, I'll just say it. All Monday I told you guys, hey, be ready. We might have to do an emergency podcast. This doesn't look good. This doesn't look good. And he hung on for a while, and turns out I believe he hung on long enough for his family to get there and to begin the process of donating.
Yeah, his last act of charity, as somebody said.
Donating his organs. So he went out a champion like he was. A brilliant guy.
It's so cliche because every time we see, a public death like this, because obviously, you're going to see the outpouring of love and the outpouring of support. But the cliche is life is so short. And this is just such a prime example, especially because it happened, in the middle of the season. And you hadn't told me that he was at that Christmas party. Does not surprise me whatsoever because that's the guy that Mike Leach seemed to be. But just the fact that, now you look towards, bowl season. And at the end of the day, bowl season doesn't matter. And I understand that. But, Mississippi State plays in a bowl game in a couple of weeks, and they're without a head coach.
You know where they play?
Where do they play? I know that they play Illinois, right?
They play Illinois. You know where they play?
No.
Orlando. Right?
They play in Tampa. You know what's in Tampa? A gigantic pirate ship in the end zone.
Yep.
Like it was going to be and
Raymond James.
Yeah, and I'm not putting anybody on blast though. This isn't on blast. This just tells you how the effect he had on people. I'm not going to tell you the coach's name, but I was talking to a coach today, and I said, hey, man, I'm sorry. Because these guys are through the wars with each other. These guys go through battles, and they see things we don't see. They live lives we don't live.
And they know what it's like to be in the pressure of everything.
The grindhouse. Like these guys go to battle together. Me, you, we just talk about it.
Yeah, of course.
But I was talking to this coach at Mississippi State, and he said, he's sad, he's mad and everything, and I don't think I'm betraying his trust. I'm not saying who it is, and plus I think this is a beautiful thing he said. He blessed me with relationships that will never fail me, an opportunity to work with my mentor, my coach, and my friend. I am grateful for that. But we have one more game to plunder, and we will. It's a pirate's life for me. That's an assistant coach for Mike Leach.
It's a pirate's life for me.
That's a simple line, but it really tells you the effect he had on the guys that work for him, work with him. And everything like that. When I went back in April, I went home to interview him, and I was sitting there with him. I've interviewed coaches like Dan Mullen before in Mississippi State's facility, but it was always like talking to a coach. Mm-hmm. All right, hey, coach, hey, how are you? Yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. With Mike Leach, it was legitimately like talking to somebody I had known my entire life. That's not cliche. That's not for this bit. He legitimately, when we cut the interview, usually – you take your mic off, you stand up, shake hands, get out of his hair, let him go to work.
Right.
Mike Leach stood up, went to his desk, pulled out a drawer, took out a bag of tobacco, threw it on the table in front of me, and said, don't go anywhere. This ain't going to dip itself.
I love that.
And we sat. That's the honest to God truth. We sat and talked. I didn't dip it because I don't.
I was about to say, did you
no, I
dip
didn't,
it?
But he did, and we sat and talked. And one other story I'll share from that evening. I was talking to him, and I said, "Hey, Coach, where you live?" And I swear to God, we're sitting on the second floor, and he's got a window that looks out over the practice facility, but it also there's woods beyond the practice facility. I said, "Where you live, Coach?" And he went, "Over there somewhere." And I said, "Yeah, well, where?" And he said, I said, "What road?" He said, "Well, I can drive to it." What? You don't know what road you live on? No, but I know where it is. And he knew where he lived. He just didn't.
He's a pirate.
He couldn't tell me where. Yeah. He couldn't tell me how to get there, but he knew where he lived.
And you know what's funny about that is that if you tell that story about like 90% of people, you'd be like, well, it's just because he didn't want you to know where he lives. Not Mike Leach. Mike Leach just didn't know the name of the road.
He was like, I live over there somewhere.
He was one of those guys when you do, in meetings with network TV, when you sit down and you always sit down with the head coach, the coordinators, and then the SIDs bring in, the players that they know will best suit their program for that. Mike Leach was the guy that you always were so excited to visit whatever school he was coaching at, because you knew that you'd be sitting in there for so much longer. You'd get all your gold from him. You didn't even need the players to come in because he was that guy. And he would take the time to make you, whether it was the lowest level broadcast all the way up to the highest level broadcast, he made everybody around that feel important, because that's genuinely who he seemed to be.
Texted you see the text that I took a picture of and sent out this morning?
Very funny.
So I texted him back in the summer when I was going back, because I had his number at that point, and I texted him. I said, "Hey man, when do you think you'll be back in Starkville?" I'm there in a few weeks. This is Brandon Walker from Barstool. The 3 sentences. Remember, I just asked him, "Hey, when do you think you'll be back in Starkville?" He goes, "July 25th. What's happening? Where do you think the best pizza in the country is?" So that either meant one of two things. He thought I was Dave Portnoy, or man just wanted to talk about pizza.
Or
just connected Barstool. He's like, everyone that works at Barstool knows everything about pizza.
Yeah. And he legitimately wanted to know the best pizza in the country. And I would bet, I hope he did it before he passed away, but I would bet he probably followed up on that to try to find where the best pizza was.
Yeah, I bet he went to New Haven, Connecticut for no reason other than trying to get the best pizza.
Absolutely. And I know, Jack, you put it out from our account, but it's also, going viral too. Just even his cameo in Friday Night Lights, the TV show. I mean, those moments are so Mike Leach, because he was that well known, and just everybody laughs when you see those clips. But I mean, I've told this story probably on this podcast. I know I've talked about it on the Barstool College Football Show. The fat little girlfriend speech, which obviously, like Jack said, is in our intro. That's when Texas Tech played A&M, and he says in that, in the clip, he's like, "Fucking Texas A&M." We used to play that speech on YouTube in my college house, and like the house that I lived in after college, all the time, just laughing because it was so funny at the expense of the team that I rooted for. And just the fact that like you don't look at coaches' locker room speeches ever unless it's your team. Yeah. But he was the guy that you would replay those over and over and over.
Yeah, I'm just going through. If you just really want to entertain yourself, just search Mike Leach on Twitter and look at the stories that people are saying. I'm looking at one like Chris Long right now, R.I.P. Mike Leach. Lost him at the Gator Bowl. Soon after, I became teammates with Amendola in St. Louis. Me and Danny Amendola used to go to Bonnaroo and other music festivals. We'd call Mike all times of the day and night. He'd always pick up, stay on the phone for an hour, entertaining our drunk BS. Like that's just who he was. Dana Holgerson. I mean, Mike Leach was more than incredible, innovative, impactful, successful, popular football coach. He was all that as a husband and a father to Janine, Kimberly, Cody, and Kirsten. Brilliant, thoughtful, kind man who taught me so much. Sonny Dykes. It's hard to put into words the impact of Mike Leach. Casey Smith. Mike Leach was an absolute treasure. On and on and on and on.
And that's why, when you talk about people that impact sports, I mean, if you're not a sports fan, you're probably like, okay, this is not my thing. But you look at Mike Leach and you see that he impacted so much past football and college football and just what he was able to do on the field. And I obviously, when you talk about college football and the evolution of it, you talk about the air raid and you talk about how offenses have changed. But that's not the first thing that I think about with Mike Leach. Yeah. It's there because it's very important, but the man and the character that he was and that it was so genuine, those are the bigger things that stand out. And just, again, the fact that it happened so suddenly, despite the fact that he may or may not have been having health issues, like it truly is do not take life for granted. Do not take the people around you for granted situation, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And, thoughts and prayers to his family and friends and everybody that's impacted. Mississippi State as well. I know he's only been there for 3 years, but losing your head coach suddenly like that is going to have an impact on a lot of people inside that program.
No, it sucks. I'm just reading some more. Chantel Jennings. This job is amazing, but it can't be done unless people let you in. In 2014, 3 months after moving to the West Coast, I heard that Mike Leach walked to work every day. I asked if I could join one day. He really didn't know me, but he said, sure, wear good shoes. Chris B. Brown. Incredibly momentous for football that Mike Leach has passed away. It's no understatement whatsoever to say that Leach fundamentally changed football forever, and I'm not sure there was any more influential coach the last 40 years when you include high school and college. Chris Lowe. On and on and on and on.
It's a very social media can be really shitty a lot, and you can see a lot of hate and a lot of people being complete dickheads. In moments like this, though, you get to really see the humanity of people that you wouldn't get to see. And, despite it obviously being a very tragic and sad situation, to see these powerful figures, both in sports and in media, coming out with these stories that are all the same. They're all, their own version of saying this guy was an incredible person, an incredible coach, and he's very funny. On top of all of that, I mean, these are the moments where you realize, like, wow, people can actually be humans.
My last one that I'll just read, just on this little rabbit hole. Condolences to Mike Leach's family, says Reese Davis. I'll never forget when game day went to Pullman. He asked me to be on his coach's show. We might have talked ball. He gave me my first sip of Cuban coffee, expounded on Geronimo as a leader, and talked about everything. Fine man, influential coach. We will miss him. If the man, there was RG3. I want to read what he said. Yeah. Can I just look up Mike Leach's coaching tree?
Yes. And while you're doing that, Jack, when I was searching for the blog that I talked about earlier of the podcast episode, I just typed in Mike Leach on our app and the amount of blogs that you had written, Jack, over the years before I even got to that, of Mike Leach and how funny he was and the clips that went viral, like that alone just speaks to just like how important he was, that you cover college football better than anybody else, and that was always on the forefront of your mind. Like, that's the type of guy.
One of my first so I did a bunch of blogging throughout, like, my high school, middle school, whatever career, but when I really went all in on college football, one of my first real blogs that I wrote was Mike Leach's 15, like, funniest moments. Yeah. And that was on a blog that nobody read, but that was one of my first ones I ever did. So Mike Leach was always, like, a guy that I always cheered for, and, yeah, it's just like he was so easy to root for, and he was genuine. And hearing all these journalists that sometimes we get into beef with or whatnot, every single person had a story about him, which means he made time for them. Right. It wasn't just a cordial, hey, let's do the interview, sit down like you said, but let's get to the coaching tree. Before, let's do maybe the Ridge Wallet.
Yeah, we can get to the Ridge Wallet. Let me just make this point, then we'll talk about the incredible Ridge Wallet. Current head coaches in college football who played or coached under Mike Leach: Dave Aranda, Neil Brown at West Virginia, Sonny Cumbie at La Tech, Sonny Dykes. If you're going to watch the playoff this year, you're going to see Sonny Dykes. Josh Heupel. I mean, these are the heavy hitters of the sport right now. Dana Holgerson at Houston, Cliff Kingsbury, head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, Lincoln Riley at USC, Ken Wilson, and it goes on and on and on and on if you extrapolate to assistant coaches and stuff like that.
So just to finish this up and give a tribute to the man, I mean, I think that we can say that this is, since we've done this podcast, like it's one of the saddest days we've seen for the sport.
It's one of the saddest days in college football in recent history.
Mm-hmm.
When's the last time this happened? I don't know.
It happens a lot more rare than you would think, because there are older men that coach in college football, right? But it's very rare that you see a sitting head coach pass away, and that's always sad. But this is also a legend, a true legend of the game. We're going to talk. We're not anywhere near done talking about Mike Leach and everything, but we got to talk about Ridge Wallet. It is an ultra slim minimalist wallet. It keeps your cards, keeps your cash safe. It keeps it in a nice tight package there, and it is a very, very good looking. They got like 30 designs, these Ridge wallets. They're about yay big, and they look like, oh my goodness, that thing, it's sturdy. It's easy. I got a big bulky wallet I'm sitting on right now. I'm not comfortable. You don't have to worry about that with Ridge Wallet. It holds up to 12 cards plus room for cash. There's over 30 colors and styles, including carbon fiber and burnt titanium. And Casey Smith. It's made with RFID blocking technology that protects you from digital pickpocketers. How many of the men in your life are getting Ridge wallets this Christmas?
Almost all of the men in my life, except for the one that, can't carry a wallet yet. But I will also say, not just men, because, Katie has one too. What I've recently learned, I've started carrying a Ridge wallet in my purse, because a lot of times whenever you are trying to change purses, like, you don't want to take all your cards. It's so small. Like you mentioned, it's so sleek that it fits in there. I can put my ID, my credit card. So obviously when you think of wallets that you put in your back pocket, you do think of guys first. However, it's great for anybody who wants to just not use up a bunch of space. Carry, you can also put your cash in there too. But the best part is you can get any color, almost any color, any design. Christmas is coming. This is a great gift.
They also have a new key case to help organize your keys. It secures anywhere from 2 to 6 keys, organizes the keys in a compact silhouette, and fold out for easy access. There are 6 colors and styles, including carbon fiber and burnt titanium. Get the best offer at ridge.com/UR and save up to 40% through December 22nd. Again, that's ridge.com/UR and save up to 40% through December 22nd.
It's only a week away, which is crazy.
Not far away at all.
Not far away. Again, Christmas shopping done easy at Ridge Wallet.
I bought this book the day Mike Leach became the head coach at Mississippi State. And I have read the book, and it really does. It takes you through his life. It takes you through, how he got to where he got to. But more importantly, it just has some of his philosophies. And if the guy never coached a football game, he's still a brilliant, brilliant man. Like the way he viewed the world, the way he saw the world. I truly think he didn't view college football coaches as better than anybody or more important than. And I think that might be lost on a lot. Like this world that we inhabit. We worship these guys, and they have these high pressure situations. But Mike Leach was truly just a dude trying to swing his sword and trying to compete and trying to win and trying to get through life.
I love that the book is named "Swing Your Sword" because there's just not a title for a book that's more fitting to an author.
Yeah.
But I know you mentioned this before we started recording, but just reading the guys who gave like a little excerpt on the back of the book. But Peter Berg, who is the director of Friday Night Lights, a great director and producer of many shows, but just like the fact that the first sentence on the back of this is, I think he's brilliant, followed with Mike Leach is a Renaissance man through and through. And then talks about how he should be the world's most interesting man. I mean, Matthew McConaughey, who I think most people would say is a pretty interesting guy. Look how long this little blurb is from Matthew McConaughey. I mean, Bob Stoops, Urban Meyer. It's just, I want to read this.
All right, let's do a favorite Mike Leach on the field memory. And I'm not talking about the press conference, but when you think his team's success and the things he did, what's the one moment? I certainly have two that really stick out to me. Of course, it's kind of cheating for me because he's been my coach for the last 3 years. And that sucks, man. And it stinks because when Mike Leach was hired to be Mississippi State's coach, like we went out and got a name. We went out and got somebody important. We went out and got somebody that meant something to college football. And he immediately changed Mississippi State. And I've seen Will Rogers grow under him. I've seen our program growing. And now it's just not going to quite get finished. We got to figure out where we go from here. But I know he left a hell of a legacy there. And whatever happens in 2023, I think it'll be strong because he's left a good foundation. But Jack, if I said best Mike Leach on the field moments, I think one stands above all the rest. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the most memorable plays in the history of college football.
Yeah, it's one of the most iconic plays, at least in this millennium, for sure.
Yeah.
And it was a Saturday night. I remember where I was. I was working the desk at the Tupelo Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal, where I had been hired to be a sports writer, but I was laying out the pages because the boss there was a goddamn idiot. Anyway, now I make 25 times his salary. Oh, wait, he got laid off. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's not
about you.
Not about me or him.
Not about you, yeah.
But we hate him.
We absolutely hate him. We like him, but he's stupid. He made a mistake.
Okay.
Now he's laid off.
I hate him.
Okay, good. Hate him. I was sitting there. We had a little. Remember when TVs used to be little?
Tiny little.
Remember when those tiny little things? We had one of those little 13-inch TVs, and it was just there. We would be at our computers, and we'd turn and look at it every now and then. And I just remember Texas Tech had the ball against number 1 Texas, and Graham Harrell throws to Crabtree. And this was back, 2008 was a quarterback paradise. Right?
Yeah.
You had Colt McCoy at Texas. You had Tebow still at Florida. You had Sam Harrell, and then you had Graham Harrell. Sam
Bradford.
Thank you. And then you had Graham Harrell doing what he was doing at Texas Tech, and he hits Crabtree in the corner. Crabtree turns on the sideline, runs in the end zone, and they beat number 1 Texas. I remember Colt McCoy's face.
Yep.
Remember that look he had on his face, like what just happened? But that was Mike Leach football. It was exciting. It was wide open, and that's the moment I remember from obviously pre Mississippi State days for me.
I think that's probably a unanimous one for a lot of people, just because it meant so much. I remember I was in, like, that was my first year in college, and just the fact that Texas got beat, that was a huge deal to us. I think that it's recency bias, and obviously working with you, it's really easy for me to look at Mississippi State. The play against Texas would have been my number 1, but just the way that he took that multiple times in games where even if you and I were watching it, it's not a single moment, just like these quarterbacks that he's had at Mississippi State for the last 3 years. And everybody likes to shit on Mississippi State. You're the butt of a joke a lot of times at Barstool, but in reality, no, this is a good thing.
Okay.
It's a good thing. In reality, if you watch Mississippi State games, even outside of Alabama, always in them, because Mike Leach was able to claw his way out of a lot of times when teams would have leads. I think in the Egg Bowl this year, just the way that the offense was able to play, and of course against Lane Kiffin, those are the moments when I'm sitting next to you as your team watching it and being like, that because he's your head coach, despite all the jokes, despite anything else, it's like, that he's never completely out of a game.
I would like to point out that Mike Leach, who passed away Sunday, was currently hired by me at Mississippi State.
He was, yes.
Right. I had not fired him in months. I went months without firing him this year.
No, there was one game. Oh,
and
you were close against Auburn. You were close against Auburn.
I was very close.
But you didn't.
I don't think you didn't fire him in the Egg Bowl either.
I didn't fire him in the Egg Bowl. Can I share Mike Leach liked the firing bit?
Oh, he did?
He did not mind the firing bit. He was like, "Oh, hey, if that's funny, do it." I was like, "Okay."
Well, he said Ross Dellinger's tweeted a lot today about it, and Ross is great. And in the E60 segment that I forgot the name who hosts E60 did with Mike Leach, they said, what would you like to be remembered for if someone writes your obituary and whatnot? And he just said, hell, I don't care. I'm dead anyways.
Yeah.
At that point. So
perfect.
Right now, obviously, I mean, we wish this didn't happen, but I also think they said, they gave Ross Dellinger a quote, Mike Leach would be pissed if Mississippi State didn't play this bowl game. They're playing in a stadium with a pirate ship.
Absolutely, yeah. And
I also think Mike Leach would be mad if we didn't have laughs during this podcast.
I completely agree.
So this is Mississippi State Stadium. They tweeted this 3 minutes ago. Mississippi State did. That's the stadium right now, the Jumbotron with Mike Leach.
Yeah.
His face on there. I don't know if you guys saw it. But yesterday, Texas Tech had the same thing. Their Jumbotron had a picture of
Wazoo did it too.
Today as well.
The fact that, Jack, you're so right. The fact Mike Leach would probably be so fucking mad right now if he knew that people weren't like making jokes
or like crying or something. Which
yeah,
I mean, obviously that's an emotion that people have during death, which is great. But I think he would want people to be like, hey, like his philosophy is probably like, yeah, well,
you know what says a lot about him the most, and I put Texas Tech aside because that one ended a little weird.
Yeah.
But you cannot find a Washington State fan that will tell you a bad word about Mike Leach.
Yeah.
He coached them for a while, then he left. And we're so sensitive as college football fans. When you leave, we turn on you. And we're done with you and screw you, hope you lose. But when Mike Leach left Pullman, maybe there was some hurt feelings at the beginning, even though I don't really remember them. They really just appreciated him, and they said, oh, you guys are going to enjoy him at Mississippi State. I never saw a Washington State fan have a crossword about Mike Leach.
I would say maybe it's revisionist history because
you don't remember.
I don't remember any Washington State
If I
fans.
challenge you to think of not a Texas Tech, because again that one ended weird.
Right, that's a different story.
But Washington now most Texas Tech fans today are great with him, and most Texas Tech fans back then were great with him. It was just the administration got a little. But anyway,
yeah, that was one of the wildest endings of a coaching.
Right. And I think if Texas Tech had that to do over again, they would.
And I think somebody got involved that shouldn't have gotten involved.
Well, and the other characters involved in that story have become villains.
Somebody
on
involved
their own.
with hookers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You ever ask him about that?
Oh no! Oh, I thought you were talking about Hugh Freeze.
Oh, I was talking about the other hooker guy.
Oh yeah, he killed. No, it doesn't.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. I will say that's what the whole point of that being like, since that incident had happened with Mike Leach, there has been a complete heel turn on the other characters that were involved in that because more things came out. But honestly, like when you talk about coaches leaving, like even if you had asked me before this tragedy had happened, before Mike Leach had passed away, and you said, do you remember if any Washington State fans were mad? I'm sure there was a few, but I don't remember it being like an outpour or an outcry on Twitter of just like, oh, we can't believe
that
he's
is a
leaving.
different part of the country where then not that they don't take college football as serious, they're much more, I don't know if mature is the right word. Like if
Maybe
he
it
left
is.
an SEC school to go to Mississippi State,
that
would have been, it would have
yeah.
been a whole
Yeah.
thing. But he also did great things at Wazoo. I mean, he had some teams that were almost playoff bound. He couldn't get over that hump, but he got incredibly close multiple times. I mean, he made Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew was going to go to
Correct.
Alabama and be
An
like
assistant,
a
a graduate assistant.
Yeah, like a glorified third string graduate assistant to get into coaching. And Mike Leach hit him up and was like, "Hey, don't you want to just throw for 5,000 yards?" And then Gardner Minshew went to Wazoo, threw for 5,000 yards, and now he's one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL. Obviously, he doesn't start anymore, but he's a backup quarterback in the NFL.
And he also had a magical run as a starting quarterback
Yes.
in the NFL.
And he became a character. You talk about social media, like people loved whatever Gardner Minshew was doing. You talk about
that might be one of Mike Leach's most iconic pictures.
with the
the mustaches of Gardner Minshew and
it's like falling off
Yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit. Yes. The Apple Cup, like, we talk about rivalries in college football. The Apple Cup is always a fun one, but I feel like, and maybe again, it's recency and revisionist history, but I feel like people cared way more about the Apple Cup from an outside of the state of Washington standpoint because Mike Leach was there.
Well, I think they cared about Washington State more so because Mike Leach was
Right.
there,
Right.
And he made him good.
and he made him good, and that was he was doing the same thing with Mississippi State. I think people paid attention to Mississippi State first and foremost because of me, and secondly
Yes.
because of Mike
Of course,
Leach.
yeah, he's definitely second to you. I mean,
My shout outs to Mike Leach will not supersede my need and
Your ego.
to be the main character.
your
yes.
ego, yeah, you have to be the main character.
Shout out to you, Coach, but come on, it's Brandon Walker.
Which is why I was surprised whenever I told you when we were shooting the NFL show today before we started recording. I said, my mom wants me to give you a hug. She feels very sorry for you. And you were like, why am I getting all the attention? I was shocked.
Well, that's what, and I'm not to take everybody inside because you both kind of deferred to me last night, where you were like, I was like, if we're gonna have to do this emergency podcast, let's all get together. And they said, well, we don't want to talk as much. This is your thing, or this is your time to talk about your coach. And I was like, this is not a Mississippi State
You're right.
problem.
Yeah, you're right.
This is not a Mississippi State loss. This is a college football loss. This is one of the great ambassadors and human beings in college football. This is
one of the most popular coaches ever.
one of the most popular coaches ever, and he never coached at an Alabama or an Ohio State. He coached at outposts. He coached at places that were off the beaten path. Every single main stop for him, Texas Tech out in Lubbock, Washington State and Pullman, and then Mississippi State and Starkville. These are three places that in their conferences get laughed at and get poked at and say they're the boonies. And Mike Leach went there and thrived. And he thrived to the point where he became a household name because of how real he was, how funny he was, how awesome he was, and how good he coached football.
And yeah, and the pop culture thing as well. I think, I'm not saying that Mississippi State is called little brother because I don't see that. But if you look at Washington State and you look at Texas Tech, those are the types of schools that get thrown into just the little brother of the state. But he was always making them relevant because of who he was. I think that when, and you were 100% right about, Jack and I kind of taking the back seat. I think that just the human inclination with this story is, well, he is your head coach. So, people want to hear from you from the Mississippi State standpoint, but in reality, it's not like he wasn't relevant and then went to Mississippi State and had crazy press conferences. And we've been talking about him for the last few years. We were talking about Mike Leach long before he went to Mississippi State. So you're absolutely correct. It's much bigger than that. But I do think that there is the tie-in too, because, even on this very podcast, we have used Mike Leach as content because he's so relevant. Like we gave you a hard time. Like before, when he was at Washington State, it was easy to make fun of him. And then he comes to your school. You're like, actually, I'm going to embrace the shit out of this.
Yeah.
Because he was that guy that was hard not to embrace. And, again, it's a gigantic loss.
The one of the things we missed with him was the only thing Mike Leach didn't do, he should have had like a 3 or 4 year run as a studio analyst.
Oh my God!
Like Mullen's doing
imagine.
now. He should have been on a game day type show. He should have been on something like that.
Like an Inside the NBA,
but with Mike Leach talking.
It was almost like if ESPN went all in like they did with Lou Holtz and Mark May. If he was on a recap show like that, I think we would have gotten a lot of great clips.
You know what I think he would have been best at?
What?
Something like the Manning cast.
Yeah.
Like if you had an alternate
watching a
broadcast of a game and had him and then whoever he chose.
You wouldn't watch the game though.
right?
Here's the thing though. If he were if Mike Leach were a plumber, he would be the plumber that most people called. If he were a bus driver, everybody would sit in the front 2 seats to hear him talk. Whatever he was going to do.
I mean, he wrote a book about what's his name? He wrote a book about like a leader, a Native American leader.
Yeah.
What?
Is it Geronimo?
Geronimo.
Yeah.
He wrote.
That's why
he loved old ancient war tactics. He loved all kind of shit. Of course, he loved pirates and stuff.
Going back to just searching our blog, looking for it, there was a blog that I wrote because he wanted to know what a stripper costume actually was. He was like, what is actually a stripper costume? Like he was talking about Halloween costumes. Just the fact that there was content that could be made out of that. And it was never forced either. It wasn't like, he sat at home and said, what's my little buffet of bits I could put out there today? It's actually like, this is what comes to his head and then out of his mouth. That's why I think something like the Manning cast would have been so funny, because you would have tuned in to watch the game a little bit, hear him from a coaching standpoint, like maybe 15% of the broadcast. You have no idea what he'd come up with.
Just to show the eccentricities of the man, I just turned to a random page. The first sentence of this chapter is, too many people reject anyone who doesn't conform to their manufactured preconceived standards. If I like something, I like it. I don't get embarrassed or worried about how others might interpret it. Now, that's wise. I turn to the next page, and he is breaking down the character arcs in Seinfeld. That's in his book, Swing Your Sword. He's just talking about that whole thing is about Seinfeld.
I can read it from over here. I love it. I literally stayed awake at night thinking about the complete, not stayed awake watching Seinfeld, stayed awake thinking about the intricacies.
I want you to imagine picking up Urban Meyer's book, Nick Saban's book, Ryan Day's book, and reading Seinfeld works because you get to observe the curious nuances of people and their interactions with one another. That's in a coach's book.
Why would he say this, talking about Jerry Seinfeld?
Nick Saban doesn't know who Kramer is.
No, he doesn't. All right. I don't know. So I don't know how the structure. I'm just spitballing as we go.
No, I know.
But the interview that I did last year with him in April.
Yeah.
Do you just want to run that at the end, or is that something crazy?
Yeah, we could run that. We could link to it. We could also.
Yeah, we just link to it in the YouTube, I guess.
I didn't want to necessarily promote it right away because it seemed like
self-serving.
Like, hey, this man just passed away. But that was something that we were going to make a clip of and combine. But I wanted to give it some time. Obviously, there'll be a funeral that happens. I'm sure there'll be that will be great. I imagine that will be a who's who of football players, coaches, analysts. When we were talking about how there hasn't been a coach that has died on duty in a while. It's not, and this isn't to call out any other coach. I'm not going to say a name of a coach, but some random coach. This was a coach that's been through literally I've grown as a college football fan with Mike Leach. Mm-hmm. He went through the Texas Tech situation. Then he went and coached in Finland. He came back to Wazoo. He made Wazoo a thing. Then he went to Mississippi State. It's just and this was the guy that everybody loved. My uncle who doesn't watch college football texted me about him. What? It's just crazy.
You're touching on something very important that I know this point has not been made yet. Coaches love Mike Leach.
Yeah.
Yes.
SEC coaches, the coaches that are in the fraternity, because it is a fraternity, they adore Mike Leach. They love him. Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, they're rivals. They love each other.
Oh, love each other.
Yeah.
When they were both hired, and we were talking about, oh my God, the state of Mississippi is going to have these two guys, these two characters. You never saw Lane Kiffin or Mike Leach talk actual shit about each other, or even more telling, ignore the other person, right? How many times, and again, not to throw shade at Nick Saban, but how many times do you see Nick Saban really talk about who's coaching at Auburn? Never.
Yeah. No,
never.
It's just we lost a one-on-one guy, a unique guy. And I don't really know what this podcast should look like. I don't know if we should kind of cut it short here. I don't know if we can just drone on because we are kind of.
Unless
What do you think?
I would say cut it here,
Yeah, I
just
think a
because
tribute.
this is like, I don't know if it feels weird talking about anything else
I
right
agree.
now, and we also don't have any pressing. It's not like there's a college football playoff game tomorrow.
Right.
I agree. I think that this is a big enough story.
But I think I was thinking there should probably be an award named after him.
I agree.
What
I like
should
that.
it be?
I think it should be the.
I have an idea. If we're gonna go off the field,
Or
I think
just
we should-
anything like what would it be?
Oh, you mean like from our?
He means like
standpoint,
he
or-
means like an actual
Oh, an
award.
actual-
No, I'm saying like there
here I
should
am
be like
self-serving
you give
unnecessary
it.
roughness.
Well, let me say something that I see on Twitter right now. I've seen a couple news reporters say this. Apparently, Mike Leach finished 3 wins short of the threshold to get into the College Football Hall of Fame
Oh, get him in.
as a coach. So this is a great opportunity for them to either relax their rules, change their rules, because if there's a College Football Hall of Fame of coaches and Mike Leach is not in it, throw it away.
No, throw it away. Yeah, no.
Throw it away.
No, he should be in the Hall of Fame without a doubt. He should have been in the Hall of Fame if he decided this year and then he retired and didn't want to coach anymore.
Yeah.
He should be in.
Yes,
Yeah. You
absolutely.
cannot tell the story of college football. I don't know if you can tell a story of American football without Mike Leach, because we're talking about all the crazy stories and the funny stuff, but just from an X's and O's, football doesn't look like football looks without him.
That tweet you read from Chris Brown, who's the author, I think, the book Smart Football, he's essentially a football historian from an X's and O's point of view. Yeah. And he's somebody that said in the tweet that you read, football as we know it does not look the same without Mike Leach. So if you write a book about football in 50 years, 100 years, 150 years, Mike Leach is the guy that you have to mention. And it's remarkable because he was just this happy-go-lucky guy. Obviously, he cared a lot about his craft, but hell, he went to law school. He wasn't like the 18 or 19-year-old who was like busting his ass for a GA. Obviously, he did the GA roles, but he went to law school.
Yeah.
All right, here's what I want you to do then. I think we're going to cut it right here.
Okay.
We've said our piece. He was a great man, a great coach, a great leader, a great everything. We can talk about what this means for my school, Mississippi State, going forward next time. We can talk about bowl games next time. We can talk about everything next time. Right now, we're going to leave it that Mike Leach led a hell of a life and was one of college football's great treasures. It's a unique sport and the characters that it possesses and creates, and he might have been the most unique character to ever come out of it. Jack, what I want you to do is I want you to drop a couple of Mike Leach clips that we talked about. Maybe the fat little girlfriends, maybe a couple.
Have to do that one. The chairs this year, please.
After we get through talking right now, I just want you to leave the people with a couple of clips. And when those clips are out, that is Unnecessary Roughness. Shout out to Mike Leach.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. One hell of a coach, one hell of a man. You made college football better. That's Unnecessary Roughness.
Their mascot is just outstanding. I mean, them and Mike the Tiger are by far the best, Matt. I mean, Butch. Butch is a better person, a symbol, the whole thing. I'll go with that. Okay, but as far as, that Buffalo and Mike the Tiger, utterly outstanding. And then it's got the handlers. No, they're not pulling that buffalo. That buffalo's pulling them. I mean, you see these kids run beside these buffaloes, and sometimes they'll wipe out or whatever. I grew up in the West. What can you say? I mean, buffalo. That's one that's hard to argue with, unless you have a live grizzly bear out there or something.
Got your coffee. Yeah. It is early. How do you take your coffee? What's the best way to take your coffee?
Well, coffee tastes terrible anyway, so don't put anything in it to obstruct the harsh, bitter taste, and just put it down one sip at a time,
So it's just all about the effect, the taste. It's not about the experience at all. It's about the outcome.
No, the experience is terrible.
My favorite weather pattern happens to be when it rains mud. Dust comes through, rain on top of it, it rains mud. This weather report here, what do I know? I'm a football coach. I suggest you go out and do what I do. Get out of bed, go outside, then you know.
We failed to make our coaching points and our points more compelling than their fat little girlfriends. Now, their fat little girlfriends have some obvious advantages. For one thing, their fat little girlfriends are telling them what they want to hear, which is how great you are and how easy it's going to be and how, we had a whole bunch of people. Everybody wanted to win the football game, but nobody wanted to play the football game. Well, that defies every level of work ethic that exists with regard to football. And as coaches, we have to solve our failure on reaching them, and the players have to listen. And I'm willing to go to fairly amazing lengths to try to make that happen. I don't know if I'll be successful this week or not, but I am going to try, and there will be some people inconvenienced, and if it happens to be their fat little girlfriends, too bad.